to James Delingpole, writer, author, broadcaster, journalist,
troublemaker,
or many other things as well. I'll pass you on to James.
Thank you very much for inviting me to. I put on my jacket. Thank you very much for coming along. That would be all. I think that you're schizophrenic. I don't think you're. I see Angel. I thought we'd start by having a 10 minutes silence for Nelson Mandela. You wouldn't be aware of this because there's been so little about it on the BBC these last few days. But apparently Mandela died recently. I think we should show our respect. I don't like long speeches. I think I find these occasions an ordeal generally. I hope I won't prove that point today. But I'm going to keep my speech quite short, and then I thought I might invite you to ask me some questions, whatever you want to. I'm just going to talk briefly about where I think we are with UKIP and where we're going. And the last time I spoke at a UKIP event, it was a dinner hosted by Nigel Farage. I made the mistake of inviting the audience to drink a toast to David Cameron. Now, a lot of them didn't get the point I was making, so let me try and spell it out more clearly this time. I'm not a great fan of David Cameron. I'm very disappointed with the way he's gone since we were smoking buddies together in our Oxford days. I think the country would be much better off if I were Prime Minister. I think you'll... Thank you. But I think that we would not be here today were it not for David Cameron. Can you imagine for a moment if we had a Conservative leading the Conservative Party? That would be kind of different, wouldn't it? I think we wouldn't have felt the rage, the disappointment, the despair which has driven us all into the welcoming bosom of UKIP. Now, we are often dismissed as, fruitcakes, extremists, weirdos. Dealing with us is like herding cats. And I understand that. I am a one-man herd of cats myself. Indeed, this was one of the problems, I think, which got in the way of my becoming, of my representing, actually it wouldn't have been you, it would have been the East Midlands. I recently tried to become an MEP for the East Midlands, and I had to go up to a hotel in Birmingham and deliver a hustings speech. This was my most successful, this was my high point. And as I often don't, I didn't read the sort of instructions properly before I went up there. So I went up, and we all, there were about 20 of us, and there were lots of UKIP members. Were any of you there? Yeah. There were lots of UKIP members there, and my turn came, and I had to go and stand on the rostrum, and the man next to me sat with his stopwatch, and he said, "Right, off you go." And I said, "Aren't you going to give me the bit of paper?" And he said, "What bit of paper?" I said, "Well, the one telling me what the subject of my speech is." He said, "No, this is where you deliver your 10-minute prepared speech." Oh, right, that! So I completely winged it, and I think, you know, I played quite well with the home crowd, but I didn't do so well on the other elements of the test. I wasn't very good at having been a member of UKIP for very long, because I hadn't, and I think I failed the psychometric tests.
No surprise.
Well, but this is it, isn't it? I'm probably the one man on earth considered to be too mad for UKIP. And I take that as an absolute compliment. I think we are a party of fruitcakes, of extremists, of loons. But I say that in a really, really good way. One of the conventions of politics at the moment is that elections are won in the centre ground. Well, it was once said that the only things you find in the middle of the road are white lines and squashed animals, which I think is true. I think that our political parties spend far too much time trying to appeal to the idiots in the middle who've got no bloody point of view whatsoever, no political understanding of the things that need to be done in this country. And I'll give you an analogy which shows why the centre ground, why this notional middle ground is stupid. Imagine you've got this great big river, and say it's, I don't know, half a mile. That's quite a big river, isn't it? Half a mile across this river. And on the one extreme, there are people saying, we need to build a bridge over this river so that we can get our cars across, because this river's getting in the way. And the other extreme is saying, no, we shouldn't build the bridge at all, we don't need the bridge. And then in the middle is are the supposedly sensible people in the middle ground, and what they're saying is, I know, let's build the bridge halfway across the river. Wouldn't that solve everything? Well, no, it wouldn't. I think the reason we're here today, the reason we're so angry about the way things are going on, is because currently we have a political system which looks after none of our interests. It looks after the interests of the Westminster political class. It's often said, lib lab con, they're all the bloody same, because they are the same. And it's not just the political class in Westminster, it's the political class across the world. When Cameron was at Mandela's funeral, God rest his soul, Madiba, yeah, maybe my signer should be back on again. Thank you, signer. Doing his selfie with the Danish delegates, and was it Obama, I forget. And I was thinking, these people are our enemy. They do not represent us, they represent each other. Yeah. So, we often hear discussed what is going to happen to UKIP. Let me outline what I think the possibilities are. I think there is no question. I don't think I'm Mystic Meg here when I say to you that in 2014 we are going to totally pwn the opposition. We are going to wipe the floor. We are going to clean up in the Euro elections. That's a given. That is going to send shockwaves through the Conservative Party. Why it would send shockwaves, I don't know, because they've got to see this thing coming. The question is, what happens in 2015? And I can see it going one of two ways, and neither of which, I have to say, is perfect for us. No, you don't get the idea in politics. The one option is that the UKIP vote splits the Tory voting base, and as of course happened in the last election, but I think it's going to happen on a much bigger scale this time. And I think what will happen, I think this is the most likely case scenario, is that Ed Miliband will get in, and we are in for 4 years of abject misery. That's the one option. The other option, and I don't find it that much more palatable, is that the Conservatives are shocked into forming some sort of notional agreement with UKIP, whereby maybe in areas where a UKIP MP stands a good chance of getting in, maybe the Conservatives will vote for UKIP and vice versa. Like you, I don't trust a Conservative Party led by David Cameron. But that's another possibility, that we get it in this, well, it's better than the current coalition, isn't it? It's better having a UKIP Conservative coalition than a Conservative Lib Dem coalition. And I think we can agree there are some good people in the Conservative Party. I mean, I know we don't like the Conservatives very much, but there are one or two MPs I think that we should be happier there. People like Douglas Carswell, even Michael Gove. I think Michael Gove is generally a good thing. But neither of these options is perfect for us, because the one option means being run by a bunch of left-wing loons for 4 years. The other one means probably being run by a government led by David bloody Cameron again. Neither of these things is ideal. But one of the things I've learned as I've grown older is that it doesn't pay to spend your time getting bitter and angry and frustrated about your inability to change things. It is not given to any one of us to change things. We can't do it. You have to accept that politics is about grubby compromise. It's about not getting the things you want all the time. But I think whatever happens, whether it's the Miliband option or the Cameron option, we here today are in the right place. We are in the right party. Because whatever else UKIP is, whether it gets people into Westminster next election or whether it doesn't, we are a galvanising force. We are changing politics. We are like the British Tea Party. We are the conscience of the Conservative Party. We are sending a message to the political class. We have had enough of your lazy centrism, of your wind farms, of your. Did I mention wind farms? How unlike me. We don't want your botched job. We want real change. We want to make a difference. And I think that whatever happens, we are doing the right thing. We are in a good place in UKIP. Thank you. Now, do
Have you written any books lately?
No, I don't do those kind of. I've got 5 of my new book on sale, so don't all rush. But that's only 5. Thank you for that, Mr. Planted, father in the audience. Does anyone want to see my signer again? I can bring him on if you feel very
That's up yours.
You know what this one is, by the way? That's a genuine sign.
Bullshit.
Thank you. I hope you won't suggest it. Yes.
Have you touched anything about question time? Because I saw you on that last time. How real is it?
It's very interesting. When you go on question time, one of the things they make a big deal of is that there is a woman who you get to meet at the end, so that you know they're not making this stuff up. And this woman's job is to vet the audience on age grounds, on race, sex, political allegiances and so on. Which does rather raise the question, why is everyone in the audience either a left-wing Muslim or a Green? How come that vetting procedure doesn't work? I went to, it was, question time, that's right. That was the one in Lancashire, wasn't it?
I'm not quite sure. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I think that, you won't be surprised to hear that I think question time is horribly, disgustingly biased. And I think that David Dimbleby is not an unbiased person. Did any of you see the episode with Diane Bloody Abbott? That woman is dangerous.
She's racist.
She is. I think she probably is. But just because she's jolly and she's female and black and she's part of that. She's on TV a lot and she's on these what's that program she's on with Andrew Neil and and people like Dimbleby are seduced by people like that. They think, well, politics is all a jolly game and it's all about talking rubbish, but in a kind of in a persuasive way. I don't believe that actually. I think that politics should be about speaking home truths, like Nigel Farage does, really. And actually, I think that was what
I like Hitchens as well.
Hitchens, yeah. Look, I'm not bitter about my total rejection I really am not. And actually, I had lunch with Nigel the other day, and I said this to him. I said, I'm really, no hard feelings at all. But having said that, I do think we need more people in the party with a media presence who can do the thing that Nigel Farage does, which is go on TV and tell it like it is. And I think the party is very much in danger of becoming a one-man show. Okay, we've got people like Roger Helmer, he's good, but who else is going out to bat for the party on
Paul Nuttall.
Paul Nuttall, yeah, but you can count on fingers of a carpenter's hand, can't you? It's
But there are more of them now than there were, and they are gradually acquiring a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
It's improving. There's a long way to go, but it is improving. Steve Crowther, I think, does it really well.
I think Steve Crowther is absolutely brilliant, and he comes across as very sort of warm and. Well, they all come across as people that we don't expect in politics. I mean, isn't that a sorry indictment of where our politics are these days?
I think after the European elections, just by the political process of where UKIP will be, you will find a lot more of our MEPs playing a front-line role across the media.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, the story of UKIP will have grown so much, and there will be so much coverage will be wanted, but it will just be necessary to speak to
That's true. That's true. Even despite the best efforts of the media, which let's face it is completely against UKIP. Look at that story in the Mail on Sunday. Like, the word has come down from Tory high command, from Linton Crosby, etc. Get UKIP. and there was the policies we know that Conservatives will not mention Nigel Farage or UKIP unless it's brought up in the interviews. We're being sold this line at the moment, which I suppose UKIP are expected to be foolish enough to buy, that well, you can't really vote for UKIP because then Miliband will get in and you'll have destroyed the country. Well, look, I don't think there's much difference between David Cameron and Ed Miliband, so it doesn't upset me as much as it might some people.
There's a very simple answer to that one. As long as we're members of the European Union, it doesn't matter whether you vote blue, red or yellow, 75% of our laws come from Brussels.
Yes.
So they're much of a much.
Yeah. Although I think actually, as regards the future of, as regards Europe, I think we look at things from a very Anglo-centric perspective, obviously, because it's where we live. But I think that the battle is not going to be just won over here. I think that there are growing protest movements throughout Europe. I think Europe is coming apart at the seams, and I think that so we shouldn't despair about whatever happens in our own country. We are part of a bigger, a wider world. Yes.
Looking at the crystal ball, I think the European elections will be a very pleasant surprise for UKIP. I'm sure they'll win an awful lot of seats. So much so, the Tory party will have to alter their ideas.
Yes.
They have to alter it. Otherwise they're burning the slot.
I agree with you, and I think that this is why to sort of emphasise what I was saying earlier, that we shouldn't get. We're going to have setbacks in the party. The bad things are going to happen. There might even be rifts. There are going to be arguments about where we're going and stuff. But I don't ultimately believe that is the real purpose of UKIP. I think we are here as a force of change. Nigel Farage often says that we're the Conservative Party in exile. And I think actually that's partly true. What we really are is we're the Thatcherite party in exile. I know there are some UKIPers who consider themselves not natural Conservatives, but Labour voters. But in a way, that's what Margaret Thatcher did as well. She appealed to working people in a way that the current Conservative Party is actually very much part of the mainstream Conservative tradition. You look at Ted Heath, you look at Harold Macmillan. These are the Conservative mainstream. Margaret Thatcher was the aberration, and the reason that she did so well was she galvanised the working classes. She appealed to them. This lot don't give a stuff about ordinary working people. They really don't. They're remote. They're grandees. They've all got their own private incomes. They are the people who actually destroyed Margaret Thatcher ultimately. They're the Heseltines, the people like that. So, yeah, I think that because we care about ideas, about political ideas, about things like small government, about sovereignty, about self-determination, about personal responsibility. These are almost apolitical virtues, and we embody them, I think, better than any other party.
Do you think there's room, because I think a lot of the appeal about people like Farage, when they speak on television and elsewhere, is that there's an intrinsic honesty to them. And by being honest, it's an extraordinarily powerful weapon and a rare one in politics. Because you simply can't be tripped up. You don't have to remember the lies you've told a year or so down the line. On that basis, do you think there's a possibility that the party itself should be aiming to try, in a non-patronising way, to educate the voting public to be honest in their own voting intentions, instead of worrying about voting for them but not voting for them because it might let them in, etc., etc.?
That's a very interesting point you make there, and it's certainly something that I've experienced in my own career, speaking about politics and being on TV and stuff. I never have any problem about what I'm going to say, because I just say what I think. I don't have this little voice in myself, well, hang on a second, you better be careful about this one because of that. And as you rightly say, before Nigel Farage started doing his sting, who was what politician was speaking honestly about anything? They always spoke with forked tongue, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I think that actually, if we get more people like that, making the case for things. One of the many things I loathe about David Cameron and his party's policy is this idea about detoxifying the brand, i.e. jettisoning every last principle and giving people no reason whatsoever to vote for you. There are certain principles worth fighting for. You can't always be career safe, worrying about what the swing voters might say. You've got to have principles. You've got to tell it like it is. And yeah, I think absolutely. I think we could be. The same thing is going on in America, of course, to a degree with the Tea Party. And I think that this. Look, the world is teetering on the brink at the moment. It could go either way. You've got organisations like the European Union, like the United Nations, which are essentially a form of one world government. It is. I know one sounds like a kooky conspiracy theorist when one talks about one world government, but actually, in that book Watermelons, there, I can't remember who wrote it, but it's a bloody masterpiece.
Highly recommend it.
When I read that book, when I wrote that book, I found all sorts of documentation. If this is a conspiracy, this is a conspiracy in plain sight. The people who work at the European Union, the people who work at the United Nations, genuinely believe that politics is far too important to be left to individual countries, and that therefore what we need is this supranational body, either the UN or the EU, which is making our decisions for us on issues like the environment and so on. And I think what we are entering is a period of soft tyranny, almost a sort of fluffier version of the Soviet Union, but on a global scale. Now that is one possibility. The other possibility, and the one I'm hoping for my kids' sake, and for my sake, come to that, is that we experience this backlash, this revolution. Well, you know what? You may not realise this, but we are the revolution. You are all revolutionaries, and you should feel proud of that. I think if this were the American Civil War, the American War of Independence, we wouldn't have been redcoats. I think we'd have been Minutemen. We'd have been saying no taxation without representation. Because how else are we going to get what we want unless we fight for it?
Yeah.
By wearing silly hats and coming to lunches like this. We're striking a blow for freedom.
Can I correct you on one point you made in your speech? That not all Labour Party are left-wing militants. There's some right-wing, or more right-wing than left-wing Tories.
No, I don't at all disagree with you on that point. Personally, I find myself sympathising a lot with certain members of the Labour Party than I do with many of my fellow Conservatives. I think it's like the People's Front of Judea, Judean People's Front thing, where I started as a Conservative, a small C Conservative, obviously. Steady.
You need to clear the room then.
Yeah. I almost got.
You did actually vote Labour in the last election.
Well, I voted for my MP, who was Kate Hoey.
She's good. She's good.
And she's pro-fox hunting, which I'm sorry. I'm sorry if there are any bloody tofu-eating animal rights people here, but I'm not one. I actually think that fox hunting is a good thing and should be encouraged, and that people who go fox hunting are among the best and bravest people in the world, and it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on or off, in fact. So I got sidetracked there, but my own political journey, I started off when I was at Oxford, when I was a mate of David Cameron's and Boris Johnson's. I started off as somebody who considered himself a natural Conservative. I would have voted for no other party. But gradually I've become disenchanted with the Conservative parties as I've realised who they are, what they really represent. And I don't know whether any of you have heard of William Cobbett. William Cobbett was this 19th century radical who started out as a dyed-in-the-wool Conservative and then realised how much the country was being screwed up by the party he thought he could trust. And he became a radical. I think I'm a radical. I'm a troublemaker, and I think we need troublemakers to overthrow this lazy consensus that we've adopted at the moment.
Quite right.
If I could raise one comment, and that is that obviously a lot of people are encouraged, I say within UKIP, is to think as former Conservatives. but one thing that struck me, I've been a member of the party for 17 years, and something that struck me more in the last couple of years is how much we're appealing to people who would never vote Conservative. And people, I mean, you look at the opinion polls carried out by Lord Ascot, by Alan Bound, by various people. We're reaching out to people who have given up on the electoral process. I gave a quote which was picked up in the Telegraph during last year's county council elections, or this year's county council elections. I call it the Heineken effect. We're reaching people that other parties can't reach. You know, we've re-engaged with people, and if you look, the country are ready for something new, and I think they're actually starting to give up on the main parties. And it's apparent in recent canvassing in by-elections, we've got a lot of support now coming from the Labour Party.
Yeah.
An awful lot of support.
Particularly in the north.
And well, no,
Absolutely, yeah.
even in the Midlands, you know, I can speak here as, you know, I was campaigning Nuneaton and Bedworth a couple of weeks ago in the council election. We'd never stood it, you know, and it wasn't, you know, we didn't have the strongest campaign, but we polled towards 12%, and it was what was so fascinating about that 12% was that it was in a swing seat, it was in a swing ward.
Yeah.
Labour, the Tories won it back from Labour, and it's a Labour Party that are frightened about UKIP. And this is why we're getting all these scared stories. They're not just coming through Lyndon Crosby, but you know, things are coming from the Labour Party. You look at some of the ghastly articles, very lazy journalism, you know, coming from Trinity Mirror Group, and it's apparently, you know, they know we're people who've traditionally been Labour supporters are giving up on them. So I think we've got to get away from, I'm no longer Conservative, I'm no longer SDP, I'm no longer Tory or Labour, I'm UKIP. You know, and I think we've got to get away and realise now that, you know, this is a fresh brand and a fresh approach, and really a fresh hope for our country.
Can I make a point, actually? I noticed very similarly to you, when we were canvassing last year, actually on council estates which you would normally consider to be heartland Labour areas, there was enormous support for us. I was pursued down garden paths by people who said, thank you for this leaflet, we're really grateful because now we can vote for you. But I think the reason that was happening was almost not the EU thing at all. I think it's because
That's secondary. That is actually secondary.
there is an innate sense of fairness in the British people, which I think has reached the point of breaking, where they don't want to be supporting parties who will propagate unfairness. And a lot of the things coming out of some of the parties are very unfair. And the whole message I was hearing both from right and left-wing people was actually UKIP is honest and UKIP is fair, and it is dealing with the British population in a fair way, and that gets huge respect.
And the other point leading on from that, of course, is we have this great British tradition. If Brazil was playing Panama in the World Cup final, I know, like many people in this country, I'll be cheering for Panama. Not because I don't like Brazil, but we have this love of the underdog. And the political classes have portrayed UKIP as the underdog. And that is another chord we've struck.
I think part of the thing also is part of this whole movement is the fact that the political mainstream are treating the general public more than ever before as some insignificance. We live in a democracy, and yet the majority voice is not only not listened to, but they actively do everything they can to run for cover. The mention of the R word. Mention at referendum, and people run for cover if they're in politics and can make the decision to let us actually be heard. And yet they're supposed to represent us, so what of democracy?
Yes. Well, I'm going to bring my slider back on
Yes. The way you're talking as a London Liberal elite, which has nothing to do with the majority of people in the country.
Well, one, I don't live in London.
I'm just saying.
Two, I might be elite. I'll give me that. But I'm not a liberal. I'm very much the opposite of a liberal. And I'm from the Midlands. I was born in Worcester.
No, you're missing the point I'm trying to make. That the Liberal elite in London.
They are.
Say
Yes.
you are liberal. Why didn't you say you were?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I just the L word. It always upsets me. I lose my head. Yeah. No, I think. Look, one of the. It comes back to that herding cats thing, doesn't it? One of the things that struck me when I went to do my hustings in Birmingham was that some people had joined because of the possibility of UKIP having a flat tax. Some people, one chap had gone into a supermarket and had become aware that he was the only English-speaking person in the supermarket that day, and that had given him a bit of eye-opener. I agree with you that Europe is not the only issue, and also I agree with you that I think the fundamental problem at the moment is that the Conservative Party has become the party of money printing. It's become the party of the corporatists. It's become the party of the bankers. The Labour Party has become the party not of the working man and woman. It's become the party of the Dole Scroungers and the Quangocrats. Neither party actually does what it's supposed to do, which is, well, really look after everybody. And I think maybe the UKIP might, I don't want to sound like Tony Blair here, but maybe UKIP is the People's Party. Yes?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said basically so far. But I still think the majority of people in this country, I would bet that they've never heard of Nigel Farage, or if they have heard of him, they couldn't say who he is. I'm wondering whether you think like we should be comfortable with that and we should just keep plugging along, or whether you think we should maybe make some either even more radical policies or sort of publicity sort of stunts to get us well known, or if the formal option we should just carry on plugging along, comfortable with the fact that the people who actually vote have heard of Nigel Farage. We shouldn't try and get the people who don't vote to have heard of him.
Look, I don't know what I was talking to Nigel about this. There are aspects of UKIP policy which I think just are absolute rubbish. For example, I think that we're making far too many spending promises. I mean, I agree just about with it. I think we should have a strong military, but I don't think that we should be championing the rotting corpse of the NHS. It is a completely broken system, and we need radical reform. But Nigel said that you can't fight too many battles on too many fronts. So he doesn't talk about when he's asked in interviews about what his position on the NHS is, he says, well, I personally think it's a bit rubbish. But the party's position is. It's the same on fox hunting. I mean, this business about devolving the decision locally. No, we should repeal the ban. It's very, very simple. We should be a party of liberty and personal conscience. We should not be a party of when the state bans stuff just because of bullying which doesn't like it. That shouldn't be the way. But I understand, as to a degree, politics is the art of the possible, and you can't fight your battles on too many fronts. So I'm not sure there are any policies so radical that we should introduce that they're going to be game changers. I think we just keep plugging away and talking about basic principles. I mean, I think there are certain things which should be non-negotiable with UKIP. I think, for example, we should be the party of less government spending. We need to radically cut government spending. And I think anyone who disagrees with that is probably called Alan Sked. And and I think he's rightly not with the party anymore. He's just sniping from the wings. You can't. Anyone in the party who thinks that it's a good idea for the government to go on spending as much money, or even slightly less money, doesn't get the economic mess we're in. Really, so that should be non-negotiable. I think the government should generally be involved in our lives much less. I think that should be a given. I think that people should keep more of their money that they earn by paying less tax. I think that should be a given. I think the tax system should be less complicated. And another of the problems we get in politics at the moment, and I blame the BBC for this ultimately. People ask me, what one thing would you do to change the country, to improve the country? And I say I would take away the licence fee and privatise the BBC. And the reason for that, apart from all the obvious reasons, is that the BBC's default assumption, always, and whenever the BBC is discussing a political issue, it's why isn't the government doing more to solve this, to do X or Y? And I think that the default question should be, why isn't the government getting out of the way on this issue and leaving us alone to live our own lives? So yeah, should we do one more question? Otherwise it'll get exhausting for everybody.
Do you think if Cameron wins the next election, he will have a referendum on Europe? He promised once a referendum, reneged on it.
Bit bloody late.
We only had one referendum in my lifetime, and that was 1972.
45.
And I really was voting for a common market. And what do we get?
We're talking about cast iron Dave, who, as we know, is a man of his word. How can you ever doubt that David? So we'll have, no, I don't trust him. We'll have maybe do one more question if anyone's got anything burning to ask. Otherwise,
No.
Well, thank you.